To store the password, we should hash it so that if someone gains access to our database, the password is not stored in plain text. For that, I'll install a new package which we used before, and that is bcrypt.js, which allows us to hash a password in a secure way. After this was installed, we can rerun npm start, and now in my auth controller, I'll import bcrypt by requiring it from the bcrypt.js package, and in there, down there in my signup action, I'll use bcrypt, and there the hash method to hash the password, which is plain text here, with a salt of 12, so a strength of 12, so to say. And I'll then continue or face errors here. Now, if I have an error here somewhere, then it'll be a server-side error. I'll copy the logic from before, so from my feed.js controller, where I just check for the existence of a status code. If no status code exists, I'll set 500 and, well, throw that error like this. In the then block, however, we'll have our hashed password, and that is the password I now want to store in the database. So in here, I'll now create a new user with the help of my user constructor, so my user model created through Mongoose. And I'll set the fields I need to set on the user. So that would be email, password, name, status. Actually, we can change the status here from required true to default of I am new. So now we don't need to set it when creating a user. Instead, every user will start with this status here. Just a little adjustment. With that, we don't need to set the status, but we do need to set email, password, and name. So the email is the extracted email. The password is the hashed password, not the extracted one, but the hashed one to secure this. And the name is the extracted name. Now, last but not least, I will call save to save it to the database, and I will return that so that we can add another then block where we get the result of that database operation. And here we know it will have succeeded, so we can return a response with a status code of 201 because a resource was created, where I can return some JSON data with a message of user created, and then maybe the user ID, which I can extract from the result, which is the user object, result._ID. So now we're creating a user here. Let's now save that. And to see that on the front end, we need to go into the front end code and there to the app.js file. And here, first of all, we need to correct our URL. And I also need to change something so that we start in unauthenticated mode. Currently, we are starting as if we were authenticated. I'll have to change that in the front end too. Now, first of all, in the signup handler, let's fix that URL. And there, the URL will be localhost 8080/auth/signup. And that will reach this route here, right? Because it's /signup, and we only end up there for requests that start with /auth. Now, we defined a put request here on the backend, so we have to set the method in the second argument in this object we pass to fetch. We have to set the method to put. We also need to append some data, and that data will be of type application JSON, so we should add the content type header and set this to application JSON. Last but not least, let's add the request body. And here we'll need to use JSON stringify to convert an object to JSON. And that object will be a JavaScript object with the email, which we can retrieve from auth data email. Auth data is an argument we'll get here. And I wrote the code to make sure that we get the data the user entered. So we'll get the email. We'll get the password. So let's also extract that from auth data. And we'll get the name from auth data. So everything which we extract on the server side. This is now all passed to our backend. Now in app.js, scroll up a bit more to the very top. Here in this state, you now should change is_auth to false so that we start unauthenticated. Now, when the page reloads, you start on the login page and you can switch to sign up. And there, let's create a new user. You can enter any name you want. And I accidentally hit enter, which is good because we now see validation is doing its job. But now let me enter a valid password, which you should remember, and click sign up. And it still failed. Let's see what's wrong here. Let's inspect for which field we're getting this in the by inspecting the network tab. And then here we see, okay, all 3 fields give us the error. That's kind of a strong signal that the data is simply not passed to the backend at all. So something seems to be wrong there. Indeed, we can validate this by clicking on headers. There we see there's no request payload added to this request. And that's simply a little mistake on my side. In app.js, in the frontend code, in signup handler, here where I extract auth data, email, and so on, that should be signupform.email.value, and the same for all the other fields too. So let's add signupform in front of that and .value at the end. The same for the name. This is how the data is stored here internally in the React app, and this is how we should extract it. So let's give this another try. Let's pick an email address, a name, and a password. And now this looks much better. I get back user created. I'm forwarded to the login page here in my front end. I get that user ID, and of course we can, as always, use MongoDB Compass to also take a closer look at our database. There I got this messages database. If I reload it now, I got a users collection in there, and here I have that user. So that is working. The user also has the starting status. Now we have no posts, of course. Now we can continue and we can work on logging the user in. And that will now be the interesting part because I already mentioned that authentication will now work differently.